The Dave Hooker Show.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app.
Download now for free.
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Well, I'm having one of those mornings. It's almost like the clock jumped forward for absolutely no reason. Welcome to the program. He's Caleb Calhoun. I am Dave Hooker. Caleb, how are you this morning? March Madness is officially here because I don't count the conference tournaments. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Happy Monday. How are you, Dave?
I'm well. So happy Monday to you. I'll go ahead and give away the big surprise, as you might see things hanging up behind me. Yes, it is my birthday. So
I was going to say, I didn't even know that until I saw it on Facebook this morning.
Yes, I am officially old and getting older. My last round of the sun in the 40s. So here we go, 49 years old. I don't know how that happened, but it happened pretty quick. Caleb, though, Caleb has got that Sean Connery type of look. He is a normal age, yet looks younger. I am an old age and look older. So there we go. Thank you, Raleigh John. I appreciate it. Happy birthday. Good morning to you. And it is really March Madness. It's kind of like that first week of bowl games in December when you're kind of like, yeah, this is kind of a bowl game, but it's really not. The good ones are still coming. And that's kind of what the conference tournaments are like to me. The ACC was the big exception when they had Duke and North Carolina. That was cool and a lot of storylines there. And I used to watch that almost as much as the SEC tournament. But let's start with that if we may. Yes, the SNL Sean Connery. That's not what your mother said last night, Calhoun. So let's go with do you remember the SNL Sean Connery?
Dave, I'm way too young for that.
We got some work to do in this guy. It wasn't that long ago. All right, so here we go. Hit that like button. We greatly appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't to this point. We will have Jacob Warren going up on the site today. Always have your notifications on wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, be it YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Turn the notifications on so you know when you get the good stuff. All right, let's start with when last we spoke, we thought that Tennessee could advance another game, maybe even two, maybe get to Sunday. All that seemed incredibly unlikely based off the way Tennessee has played with the Zakai Zeigler injury. And sure enough, that's what happened. The Vols run at the SEC tournament ended on Friday. So we're a couple days behind that before we get to the NCAA tournament and Tennessee's draw, which ain't great. Let's talk SEC and the way that it ended. What were your thoughts, Caleb Calhoun?
The SEC tournament?
Yes.
Yes, the Missouri game exposed. I don't think it exposed Tennessee without Zakai Zeigler. I mean, it somewhat did, don't get me wrong, but I think the bigger thing was it exposed something I've been ranting about all year, which is, again, Rick Barnes' commitment to the mid-range. I counted, if you looked at the numbers across the board, probably the one stat that probably hurt Tennessee the most from that game was 14 turnovers, but Missouri had 11. That's not like significant to explain a loss. They shot exactly the same from three. Tennessee out-rebounded Missouri. What really stood out was Tennessee took about 11 mid-range shots, made 2 of them. Missouri took 3 mid-range shots, also made 2 of them. Most of Missouri's 2-pointers were at the rim, and so Missouri shot so much better from the field on 2-point attempts than Tennessee. And that was the difference because Tennessee, for some reason, still plays basketball like it's 1995 and the idea that the mid-range matters. And this is going to do them in until Rick Barnes one day wakes up and accepts that this is not an efficient way of playing basketball.
Well, he's not going to. I mean, let's be honest with you. At this stage in his career, how many people would just up and change everything? So I don't think he's going to do that. You can be older and be innovative. Andy Reid in the NFL is still innovative, but he started innovative. So I don't think you suddenly become innovative. I wasn't surprised that Tennessee lost on Friday. I thought it was just kind of a matter of time. And listen, there is this debate that has cropped up on our message board that, Missouri hit the mid-range jumper, or this team hits mid-range jumpers, and they do that. Well, that's fine. And there may well come a day where a horse and buggy wins the Daytona 500. It may happen, but that doesn't mean it's the most efficient way to get it done. And right now, I hate analytics when it comes to certain sports, like baseball, for instance. I do actually like it. I guess I like it in most sports other than baseball. I like it in football where teams are more aggressive about going for two. But the simple fact is analytics make more sense in basketball, in my opinion, Caleb, than any other sport. The bottom line is your best odds statistically over time shooting an open three. If you can't get one of those, your best odds are taking it to the rack and hopefully getting an and one. Your worst odds are the mid-range jumper. That is not a philosophical debate whether Caleb likes a 3-4 or I like a 4-3 or I like an I formation and Caleb likes tempo. I mean, these are not debates when it comes to basketball, Caleb. These are the facts of the matter in the way that basketball is played today, period, end of discussion.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where 2 + 2 = 4. I mean, percentage-wise, the mid-range, it is a high risk. It is a high risk, low reward shot. It is a shot that is more difficult than shooting underneath the basket that yields the same results. And actually, shooting underneath the basket yields better results if you think about it, because you increase the likelihood, like you just said, that you'll get fouled if you shoot underneath the basket. So you're not really increasing the likelihood that you get fouled if you pull up from mid-range on a 15-footer. And so it is ridiculous that teams still stick to this. I mean, look, the idea of the mid-range was before the three-point line was invented. It was, you need to kind of stretch the floor a little bit so people have to respect your outside game so you can go inside.
To 12 feet stretches the floor, but you're right. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And once the three-point line came into play, which in college basketball was the early 80s, it should have died then. It took a lot of again, coaches had to, it takes 30 years for coaches to figure out changing games or the change in rules and how to best implement them. But even still, it's ridiculous that some coaches still live and die by it. I get Rick Barnes is older. You would have thought that to a certain degree he would be innovative. I mean, Rick Barnes, to his credit, was very instrumental in supporting the college basketball, reducing the shot clock length from 35 to 30 seconds, which I think has done so many wonders for the game. How many games did we watch back in the day, Dave, where lesser teams would just hold the ball for 30 seconds and try to try to steal the game in the end?
A lot, but here's the other thing philosophically about the mid-range jumper is kids don't shoot it. If you want to just go to a local gym this afternoon, do a little off the hook sports homework. Anybody that wants to go to a local gym, go to a boys and girls club, go to whatever you want to, and you do not see anybody shooting a mid-range jumper ever. They're not taught that. They're not raised that way. It's the three or take it to the rack. It's that simple. So you're not only, if you're trying to push that down players' throats, you're not only doing something that analytically is not a good fit, you're doing something that generationally is not a good fit. They don't do it well. They don't. This generation of kids, they don't do it well. We were at the Basketball Hall of Fame on a trip here a couple of weeks ago, and I think my son shot the same from the three-point arc as he did goofy little mid-range jumpers because there were so many people on the floor that we couldn't get the shot we wanted. So it's just that's not going to change anytime soon. Everybody loves the three. We could debate whether or not it's good or bad for the game, and it's too much scoring and all that, but this is where it's been going, and I'm almost surprised that it took probably 4 or 5 years longer than I thought. It was John Calipari who was one of the first to say this when he went to Memphis. I interviewed him, and he said, here's the best shot is the open three. The second best shot's taking it to the rack and get fouled. That's a long time ago when he left the NBA for Memphis. I mean, Caleb, that's not yesterday. This is nothing new.
Yeah, not at all. And it's funny because, John Calipari is, he was the architect of the dribble drive, which is the whole offense is predicated on the guard at the top of the key. You take it to the rack every time. And once you're at the rack, you make a split-second decision of either to dish it out to the big guy underneath, go up with a layup yourself, or kick it out to a guy for three. But that's how you do it every time. You don't really see a lot of ball movement outside. You don't really see a lot of ball movement outside of underneath the rack with John Calipari's system. And it's funny because John Calipari, to me, was always kind of a clone of Rick Pitino. And Rick Pitino was really the first coach that really embraced the three-point line in college basketball when he went to Kentucky in the 90s. And
let me say this, too, before it feels like we're ripping on the balls, because I don't mean to do that. I understand that they do what they do, and they do it very well, and that's defensive basketball. They could go against a couple of teams and make a run if they have an off-shooting night. If those other teams have an off-shooting night and Tennessee plays good defense and good fundamental half-court basketball to limit the amount of shots, things could happen. That's why it is basketball. So this is not a situation where TCU in the national championship game is going against Georgia, and you really see very little chance of TCU or even opportunity of TCU to win. I mean, we'll talk about how deep we think that Tennessee's going to go in the tournament, but it is still a tournament. So enjoy it. It is not, I don't think, the best type of team to advance in the tournament. Stranger things have happened, and Tennessee can take advantage of teams if they are not having their best night shooting. They certainly can. It is time for today's tough question. It's brought to you by our friends at Zool Beer Company, the official craft beer of Off the Hook Sports. Today's tough question is now.
Today's tough question. Take a side.
Take a stand.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Zool Beer, XULbeer.com, the official craft beer of Off the Hook Sports. Convenient parking downtown, a worldwide award-winning craft beer. Tennessee, today's tough question, where they seated too high, too low, just right at a 4 seed in the East region. And lump this together with your take on this, Caleb. They not only received the 4 seed, but in my opinion, they received the lowest 4 seed because they got in the bracket of Duke, Purdue. It's an incredibly tough bracket. This is just me eyeballing this thing, but I thought they got the lowest 4 seed of the group. I would rather be any of the other 4 seeds in any of the other quarters of the bracket. So what did you think? Tennessee seated too high, too low, or just right?
See, I disagree. I actually think they got a favorable 4 seed. Funny enough, it may be the lowest technically of numbers, but in terms of matchups, I'd rather Purdue be the number 1 seed in my bracket than Alabama or who was the other number 1 seed that wasn't Kansas? My mind just completely went blank.
But don't we think that? But we think Purdue is probably the overall number 2 seed, right?
I think Houston was the overall number 2 seed. Purdue was the overall number 3. Purdue lives and dies by defense. I think those are the type of teams that Tennessee can beat because both of them play an outdated style of play. And so I do think that's an advantage for Tennessee. I think, in all honesty, I think they were seated too high. And I know that's a hot take, but this team lost 10 games.
Too high as a 4 or too high as a lower 4?
Too high as a 4, period.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they were seated too high as a 4, period. They lost 10 games this year. They got swept by Kentucky. They basically got swept by Missouri, losing once at home and once on a neutral site. They lost at home to Vanderbilt. They lost to Colorado. I think what is selling for Tennessee right now is their quality wins, which the NCAA they're overusing the net rankings. Tennessee's got 2 really good wins. They got more than that, but their 2 main ones are against 2 number 1 seeds, Kansas and Alabama. Alabama, the overall number 1 seed, and they beat Kansas on a neutral court. No issue there. Take nothing away from them. They also beat Texas. If you've really followed the landscape of college basketball this year, though, you aren't that shocked that Tennessee beat Alabama and Texas at home, because it's just been such a rocky year for college basketball teams on the road. And Tennessee has been anything but good away from home since SEC play started. And I don't know how you could look at that. Now, I know they're not supposed to look at this, but you also have to look at they don't have their starting point guard and look at what you saw in the conference tournament, which I know they placed no emphasis on, but they finished their last 10 games 4-6. And
well, that to me is the biggest number. I think the two biggest factors in order, number one, 4-6, didn't look great doing it. And I think number two, Zakai Zeigler. And you may say, oh, that's not fair. He got them to this point. But they tell you that they factor that in. And don't think for a second that the College Football Playoff Committee is not going to do the same thing. I thought they did with Hendon Hooker. That's the only reason I can figure out how Alabama was rated ahead of Tennessee despite the head-to-head win. So they're going to factor that in. This is a made-for-television event. And this is also the goal is if you're the committee, you want to create good matchups. You'll never say that, but you also want your best teams to survive. So it's hard for me for those two reasons with one of your key players out and going 4-6 in your last 10 to call Tennessee one of the best teams that you're like, ooh. I hope they get there to that 16-8 or 4 because they're hot. They're fire, as the kids say. I don't see that out of Tennessee. So if you're complaining about your seeding, which you like it a little bit better than I do, if you're complaining about your seeding, then you've got nobody to complain but yourself. And as Caleb pointed out, you might have been a little fortunate because I had no problem with a 4 either way. I would have been surprised at a 3, and I thought a 5 would have been too low personally. But you're splitting hairs when you're either a 1 or a 2, and the chances of you winning are like 95% the first game, and you get a favorable matchup in the second round. So you're either 1 or 2, or you're kind of just everybody else to some extent until you get down to 14, 15, and 16.
Yeah, I agree. I think it goes with tiers. You're a 1 or a 2, or you're a 3-6.
Yes.
Now, 7-10, you don't want to be either because then you end up playing a 1 or a 2 in the second round. And that's always a dangerous matchup when you do that. But you're right. You're 1-2. 1-2 is one tier. 3-6 is another. 7-10 is another. You're right. 11-14 is another. And then 15 and 16. That's where you're
15 and 16. You're probably going home after the first night.
Exactly. It's a big deal when a 15 seed beats a 2 seed, and a 16 team has done it only once. And ironically, the team they did it against, Virginia, won the national title the next year, which is still hilarious.
Now, I'm interested in what people say on the message board because Tennessee, I believe historically, when I covered them really, really closely, and they were really, really good in the early 2000s, I thought did get the short end of the stick when it came to the selection committee. I thought there were times they should have been a 2 and they were a 4, or they should have been a 4 and they were 6. And I don't think Tennessee's viewed as a basketball school. I think if you're sitting down and there's a gray area between a Tennessee and a North Carolina, just throw a team out there, or a Tennessee and a Kentucky and one of the blue bloods, I think the blue bloods are going to get the benefit of the doubt from a seeding standpoint. Would you argue with that, Caleb, or do you think that's pretty much the case?
No, there is plenty of evidence for that. And on the women's side, just so people know, that happens on the women's side too. Tennessee always gets a favorable matchup on the women's side. Always. And they always will. And
yes. So I didn't really have a problem with a 4. I don't feel like you're just crazy upset about it, right? That they should have been a 5. Maybe should have been a 5, but
yeah, I'm not crazy
upset. A 3. Could.
I don't think they could be a 3.
A little bit of a reach, but
23-10. That's just I get the schedule, but it just doesn't look like a good record on paper.
See, here's what you have to do, though. You have to factor in they're trying to get more people to these games, so they're going to factor in where they play as well. So sometimes that can get you up or down a seed higher than you should, because there were a couple of times where they would ship teams wherever, and I think it was me, 5 other reporters, and about 100 Tennessee fans, and that's the only people that were in some of these first round games because it's expensive. I mean, if you want to put this together, I mean, if you want to go out to some distant place and follow your team and you book a flight, you and I booked flights before. I mean, it's expensive this time of year. So, I mean, if you're going to do it 4 days before your team heads out. So,
and you don't even know if you're going to get 1 or 2 games out of it.
Yeah. So you can get shifted around a lot. I think, Tennessee's in Orlando, right?
Yeah, which they should be happy about.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's drivable, miserable drivable, trust me. And you don't want to go to Disney World because it gets as hot as blue blazes out there. The 2 hottest places in the world are Washington, D.C. and Orlando, just for the record. And they are the source of the most misery, perhaps, in our country, depending on if you have kids and what age they are. So new ones on board right now. Hit the like button. Go ahead and subscribe. And then I want to get to 4 downs as we continue to break down Tennessee's seeding. 4 downs brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. This real quick, Raleigh said possibly getting Duke than Purdue is unfortunate. Not to mention if we make that, we could possibly play Kentucky or USC. Brutal bracket. 4 downs brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Can't tell you how happy I am with my LASIK surgery. I can see like an eagle far away. It's never been the case. Always had to wear contacts, and the near vision is coming in as well. I've got an appointment this week. Look forward to getting that all taken care of, and it's just awesome because they're personal and they care for you. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, local doctors, not like the other places that fly doctors in from, I don't know, maybe Orlando. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, they are local. They've got the eye vision centers, and they've got the LASIK centers and laser vision centers to take care of cataracts or take care of LASIK. So let's get to 4 downs. Right now, we break down Tennessee's seed and look forward a little bit. First down. Should the Vols be scared of Louisiana in the first round?
Yes. Louisiana has their go-to scorer is a big man named Jordan Brown. He's 6'11". So they can hang with Tennessee in the paint because of Jordan Brown. So they can neutralize that matchup advantage Tennessee has. They are 23rd in the nation in three-point percentage at 37.8. Now, they don't shoot a lot of threes. They only hit about 7 a game, which is like outside of the top 200. But that's because they focus on going down low, and then they use their guards. They got 2 guards that are shooting over 40% from 3 that are starting. So this is a dangerous inside-out team that if those guards are hitting their threes, Tennessee's in big trouble.
I don't think they're in big trouble because Louisiana is the 92nd best team in the nation. Faced one major conference team this season, Texas, on December 21st. The Longhorns won that game 100-72. The same team, Texas, the same Texas team that lost to Tennessee in January. So I'm going to say you don't have to be worried about Louisiana any more than you should be worried about any tournament matchup because anybody can get hot and knock anybody out. So I'm not saying just chuck it all together. But I agree.
Louisiana could lose by 30 or win this game, one or the other.
That's very true. All right, so after you've seen the bracket, you've seen the region that Tennessee is in, best case scenario for the Vols. That's second down brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Second down.
It's what we've talked about all year, and it's proven with this bracket. Elite Eight's the best case scenario. They could go all the way to the Elite Eight or lose in the first round, but Elite Eight's best case scenario. Look, Duke's.
I'm going to sound more negative than you. I think Sweet 16's best case scenario.
No, I think Tennessee. I think Purdue's a good matchup with Tennessee. I'm telling you, they are a much better matchup for Tennessee than Houston or Alabama on a neutral court would be for Tennessee.
So you'd rather see somebody in Purdue that plays a similar style, but probably better than you would see an up and down style that you may struggle to defend. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, because and I'm talking myself out of it a little bit because Tennessee did beat Alabama with their defense, but they had Zakai Zeigler when they beat Alabama. And so one of the reasons they could handle up and down tempo teams was because Zakai Zeigler could run with them, and they don't have Zakai anymore. So at this point, I think Purdue, because if Santi Vescovi and Josiah Jordan-James are both hitting from the outside in just one of those games, yeah, I could easily see them beating Purdue at that point. And Duke's really hot right now. They've won like 9 straight. They just won the ACC tournament. But we forget, middle of the year, they were 17-8. And there was a lot of questions about them at that point. So I don't think those questions subside overnight. And also where they're playing these teams. You don't really have nobody has a home court advantage over Tennessee based on where they're playing. They would play the Sweet 16 in New York. If they face Purdue, they would face them in New York. Look, guys, I'm going to say this out loud too. Don't underestimate Memphis's ability to upset Purdue in the second round. And then you could have Tennessee, Memphis in the Sweet 16, which would be epic.
Yeah, I'd be down with that. I think Sweet 16 is the tops. I don't think they're going to make the Elite Eight. I don't see this style of basketball. It's just the moral of the story. I mean, I'm reading a book about, I think I mentioned to you about Bo Jackson. At the end of the day, he's going to be one of the best athletes that I've ever seen. And I believe the best athlete to ever walk to the face of the earth. That's the opinion I'm going to walk away with. Well, I'm going to walk away with the opinion, no matter what's in the book between now and then, that Bo Jackson's the best athlete ever, and that I think the Tennessee basketball team and their style is not set up for success in the tournament. I don't know how it's going to end, but I don't think it's going to end in the Elite Eight. So I think it's going to be a little bit sooner. Seems like Tennessee is always lined up to play Duke and something happens. Either Duke or Tennessee loses. When's the last time Duke and Tennessee has played a significant game? Really? Ever?
So Tennessee played Duke 1 year, like Quanzo Martin's first year in one of those preseason tournaments. That's the last one I remember.
Yeah, we need Tennessee needs to play Duke more often. And by the way, I love the Vols cursive thing, but I think you also need I'm talking about the jerseys. You also need the Vols in block letters like they've got Duke. Would that not look cool? Like just EOLS in front, like Duke has those block letters.
Yeah, my only thing is I don't like copying Duke on too many things because I just don't respect Duke as a fan base. There, I said it. It is people. They got the greatest fans. No, it's a bunch of people that don't follow sports. They go to Duke for 4 years and they get coached up on how to be fans at a basketball game, and they think they're so cool.
Wait. You're not pointing out the worst Duke fans. I'm completely listen. If you go to a school and you graduate, you can root for that school till your heart's content for the rest of your life. But if you just grew up during the Bobby Hurley days and the Grant Hill days and the Christian Laettner days, and you just picked this elitist school out there that you could never get into, then what the H? I mean, really? That's the school you picked? I mean, pick Indiana or Houston back in the day, or even pick Kentucky, a school that you could get into.
Yeah, that is true. Well, that's because anybody can get into Kentucky. But
shots fired.
But like, it is I get it, but like those fans, I get they go to the school and they just want to be a part of. They don't follow this sport. They don't follow any other sport ever. But they're like, oh my god, I love the social scene of college basketball. So let me do like when like Duke had a chant, like when a player gets a shot blocked, they would chant like just like prom night, just like lame chants like that. That's just so annoying. So I don't want to be anywhere near like Duke with that level of nerdism in a fan.
Agreed. Travis says Larry Johnson's UNLV team. That's absolutely right. If you're picking a team during those early mid-90s, you should pick Stacey Augmon and all those cats that played for UNLV. They were more fun, and they weren't elitist. So there you are. 4th down. Can Tennessee, if they get the matchup, beat Duke?
Well, sorry, 3rd down real quick. Worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario, yes.
We agree that Tennessee, worst case is they lose in the first round.
That's possible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we both agree with that.
Sorry about that.
It's
4th
okay.
down.
Cool. 4th down, yes, they can beat Duke. I absolutely think they can beat Duke. Again, Duke was 17-8, middle of the season. John Shire he looked like he was not living up to Krzyzewski's legacy. They got red hot to end the year. They won 9 straight, including the ACC tournament. It's nice that you're red hot, but that also means that you were playing late into the weekend ahead of the NCAA tournament, so you may not be as fresh. And so I think, yes, they can beat Duke. I don't think they will, but I think they can.
Coming up on the program, we're going to continue to break down the Vols. How far will they go? What the H talks about this young writer named Caleb Calhoun, and he says no to the Sweet 16, but maybe he's changing it just a little bit. Closer look at Louisiana, and also have the Vols figured themselves out with Zakai Zeigler. Have I told you my one Christian Laettner story?
You have not.
Okay, so are you aware that I have abnormally large feet?
I am not.
Okay, so I wear a size 15 shoe. Everybody will enjoy this. So there's this place that's like it's in the inner city of Atlanta, and you think that you're in probably not the safest place in the world, and then you go in, and it's like the Best Buy of shoes with people with big feet. So that is where a lot of the players went. This is years ago in the 90s. When they were in Atlanta, the NBA players would go to this place. You can Google it. I can't remember the name of it, but you would Google it because if you had over a size 13 shoe, it's tough to get shoes. Now anybody can get shoes. But so, yeah, I'm sitting there trying on my size 15s, and I look over to my left, and there's Christian Laettner. And I'm like, good place to get shoes, I guess. And he goes, yeah, if you got huge feet.
Christian Laettner, the most undeserved gold medalist of all time.
But the greatest college basketball player of all time. But that was a sad place to go. I mean, that was, my feet are so big. And it's one thing if you're an NBA player and you're making millions of dollars. It's another thing if you're Dave, a reporter for the Knoxville News Sentinel, and you're having to go in and get these big shoes because you have monstrous feet. Size 15.
The worst is if your hands aren't big enough to go with it, because in the NBA, hand size is way more important than foot size, funny enough. So
yes,
one of the underrated stories of why Michael Jordan was so good was he had abnormally large hands. Like, he had hands the size of a center. But
yes. John saying, hit the like button, do it now. Hugh Freeze wants to know what your ankles looks like. He does. That's how he evaluates prospects. All kinds of neat things that you learn on Off the Hook Sports. But click that like button, hit subscribe, and we greatly appreciate that. Brought to you by AndyMasonRealEstate.com. AndyMasonRealEstate.com, over 40 years of experience in the real estate field. It is phenomenal. That office will take care of you. Best service, best prices. Doesn't get any better. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. So how far will the Vols go? And also, we'll continue on our comparison series as far as what current NFL prospects remind Tennessee players and coaches with the program of former Vols from back in the day. Stay tuned. 2 minutes back, Off the Hook Sports with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.
Our family has been creating jewelry since 1986, each piece unique with a story all its own. I'm Rick Terry with Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. I'm a jeweler, and I want to be your jeweler. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler. My family and staff look forward to serving you. So please come see us. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street, right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Inflation has risen to the highest level in over 40 years, according to the April 2022 U.S. Inflation Calculator. Will your investments provide you the income you need in retirement? Are you losing purchasing power of your savings due to inflation? Simply stated, if the cost of goods and services are 8% higher and you're only earning 4% in your investments, that money buys you less of what you need. Right now is the time to act. Call Guardian Investment Advisors today.
Hey folks, Gary Viles here. I want to personally invite you to North Knoxville's newest sports bar and restaurant.
It's Big Orange Phillies, located in Black Oak Center. And yes folks, it's happening in Halls. Big Orange Phillies offers family-friendly environment with homemade meals and the best deli-style subs around. Billiards, darts, jukebox, shuffleboard, and cornhole, and a full bar. We also offer valet parking on weekends and during special events. We even have a covered back patio. It's happening at Big Orange Phillies. We want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's your pair.
Chattanooga, we're at it again. For the 5th year in a row, you voted us best of the best criminal and DUI law firm.
And finalists for best law firm and best personal injury firm.
Thank you for the love, Chattanooga. We won't let you down.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Welcome back. Hit that like button. We greatly appreciate that. What do you think about Tennessee and where they are seated in the NCAA tournament as a whole? I'd give it a thumbs medium. Not really a thumbs up, not really a thumbs down, Caleb, but just thumbs right down the middle.
I'm a thumbs up. I think they, just because I don't think they'll go far, I think that's about them, but I think they could not have asked for a better bracket for themselves.
Does Rick Barnes get sometimes preferential treatment in some of those meetings when it's close with some unknown guy?
Maybe. Rick Barnes does have some connections. And I noticed that when he came to when he took over at Tennessee, because Dave, you know this, a lot of times coaches get criticism for scheduling easy non-conference, but in reality, that's usually because they don't have a lot of connections. Whereas Rick Barnes is able to schedule all the toughest teams possible in non-conference because he's got so many connections across the country and get them in those preseason tournaments and all of that, you name it. I wonder sometimes when coaches schedule really easy non-conference is if that's their decision because they're scared, or if they tried to schedule tough but nobody wouldn't agree to it with them.
Jerry Green.
That was Jerry Green?
Well, I mean, Jerry Green had every tie to Carolina. Goodness gracious, you know, he was tied into Carolina. He coached there. Shouldn't there have been a North Carolina-Tennessee rivalry if they thought highly of him? Simple fact is he was just kind of the goofball who showed up at the lodge and had too much to drink too early.
So the coaching circles didn't respect him.
Yes.
And by the way, based on what you told me, he didn't deserve any respect.
That is fair. Craft Treats. Go to crafttreats.com. Use the promo code Off the Hook. That's the promo code Off the Hook. They've got the chill pills with the CBD that'll take care of your pet's digestive issues, also the arthritis issues. And don't forget about social anxiety, which my dog was flipping out because family was in town. And for my birthday, yes, I'm old. You can see it behind me. My wife wanted to embarrass me, so my birthday is today. So there we go. And my birthday wish is very simple. It's that Tennessee makes the Final Four. That is my birthday wish. That's my only birthday wish. I'll blow out the protein cheesecake that I eat for sweets tonight with a candle on it, and that'll be my birthday wish because that's great content. We were talking about my size 15 shoes. SCC Scout guy says, I wear a size 15 when I joined the Marine Corps. They gave me a size 13 boots, which were as big as they had. My feet were bleeding by day 2, and they got me a set of size 15 from somewhere. Yes, I went down a similar path in that I have 2 different size feet, actually. They're close enough now where dress shoes, I don't go differently. But they had this thing that Nike put on, Caleb, where you could get Jordans that were in different sizes that people had returned or whatever. So first of all, it took like a year and a half to get the Jordans. So my feet probably shrunk by that point. But when I got them, they were all white and they were like the highest up the ankle they would go, and they must have weighed 15 pounds a shoe. And I remember the first thing our gym teacher said is, "Hey, boys, we're going to run a mile today." With a 15-pound shoe on each foot, my calves were burning. Back in the day, people don't remember. In the 90s, you walked into the store and you said, "Do you have anything bigger than a 13?" They looked at you like you were stupid.
That's so crazy. Wow.
Terrible. It was terrible. Still to this day, if I find a run of 15s at like one of those shoe carnivals, I walk out of there with like $400 worth of shoes and don't shoe shop for like 4 more years. All right, so let's get to What the H. What the H is brought to you by our friends at Bassey Lawn and Garden. Man alive, it is worth the drive. Caleb Calhoun says Sweet 16 at best before we get this.
I said Elite 8 at best.
Well, I know you said, but that's my point. What the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
So what the H? What changed? I thought you were at best Sweet 16 last week. Was it that showing against Missouri that changed your mind, Caleb?
No, the bracket changed my mind. I still don't believe in this Tennessee basketball team. I just said Elite 8 is best case scenario because some chips could fall where they may. But I don't think they're going to the Elite 8. I still don't think they're going to the second weekend.
Okay.
I got second round. They're getting bounced out in the round of 32.
Okay, but you think that they could make the Elite 8?
I think they can make the Elite 8. But I don't think they will make the Elite 8. I think they're getting bounced out in the round of 32. And look, half of this is if upsets happen in your bracket that you can't control. Do you remember one year it was Bruce Pearl's best run with Tennessee? They made the Elite 8 because they played San Diego State and won. And then Ohio upset Georgetown. Ohio was a 14 seed. So Tennessee got to play them in the second round. And that's what got them to the Sweet 16. And then Quanzo Martin, the year he made the Sweet 16, he had to win 3 games to beat Iowa in overtime. They were the 11 seed. They got to play a 6 seed UMass. I felt the seed should have been reversed. So they beat UMass. And then Mercer upsets Duke. So they get to play Mercer in the second round, around the 32. And that's how they got to the Sweet 16.
Well, it's not going to be quite so easy for the Vols if they beat Louisiana, which can shoot. They're going to play Duke most likely in round 2. Duke versus Oral Roberts in the 5-12 matchup. And then you would think eventually play Purdue, which is a top seed. You like Tennessee's draw a lot more than I do, but at the end of the day, it's going to be more a style matchup. I think we both agree with that. So go ahead and click that like button. It brings more people into the channel. We greatly appreciate that. Elias says, do I feel like Oral Roberts is a very dangerous matchup for Duke? And I don't think so, Caleb, but I mean, there is going to be an upset, and usually it seems like every year there is always that 5-12 upset, almost like just the sun comes up.
That's the most common one of them, is 5-12. And I mean, Oral Roberts, Elias points out, they turn the ball over less than anybody in college basketball, and not only that, but they hit the second most 3-pointers of anybody in college basketball. They hit 11 a game. You play like that, man. I mean, I'm sorry, but like, they're the type of team, they get red hot shooting the ball. Nobody's beating them. A team that shoots well from 3, hits their free throws, and doesn't turn the ball over, those low seeds go far in the NCAA tournament. Those are where you get the Cinderella stories from.
Nope, they do. So go ahead and get your thoughts. If you want to put on the message board, what would you be happy with? And you can say championship. I don't think you should walk in to any sort of tournament. Listen, if they asked me if I were a player today, what would you be happy with? The Final Four, the Elite 8, the Sweet 16, or winning a game? I'd be like, heck no, man. I mean, I expect to win the thing. I've already looked at the bracket. I've counted down the number of wins you got to get. And if that's where you are, that's great. I mean, I can certainly take that. And you tell me where you think they need to be, what would make you happy. At some point, for the love of Pete, this Tennessee basketball program, whether it's with Rick Barnes or not, you have got to be the type of team that can step into a tournament and scare some people. And I don't know that they've necessarily been that since Bruce Pearl. Have they scared people when they walked into the tournament in that time span?
The Grant Williams team was scary. They were a 2 seed, and they got robbed against Purdue that year. They should have gone to the Elite Eight. There was a terrible foul call in the last second on what turned out to be a tie. Was a 3-point attempt. Guy got 3 free throws, hit 2 of them to send it to overtime. But that's the only time under Rick Barnes I think they were scary. I mean, look, under Rick Barnes, they've been a 3 seed twice, and they lost to 11 seeds both times. Last year, they lost to Michigan, and then they lost to Loyola Chicago a few years ago, an 11 seed, when the Loyola Chicago had that Final Four run. So, I mean, every year, here's another stat with Rick Barnes that I think is very alarming and disturbing. Every year he's been in the NCAA tournament with Tennessee, when his loss has always been to a lower seed. Never has yet made loss to a higher seed.
Yeah, and let's just turn this segment in when we resend this video out to, is this good enough? Because this is where Tennessee has been for a long, long time. And that is, I mean, you just talked about they should have beaten Purdue, bad call, then they would have been in the Elite Eight. Well, they should have been in the Final Four, but Julius Peppers comes on the court in the early 2000s for North Carolina. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. But at some point, I mean, even Bruce Pearl got Auburn to the Final Four. And is this good enough? At a football school, is this good enough to be knocking on the door of essentially a Sweet 16, Elite Eight every year, knocking on the door, hoping something happens, hoping somebody gets upset ahead of you and clears the path, or hoping you have a great night shooting or they have a bad night shooting? Is this good enough?
I'll tell you why it's good. I'll tell you what makes it good enough or what makes it not good enough.
For a football school, by the way, is the caveat.
It's good enough as long as fans are still interested in the program. Now, I would say there could come a point where this keeps happening, where Tennessee has a red-hot regular season and fans are just finally saying, I just don't believe in this team. I've seen too many Rick Barnes teams flame out in February and March to really believe that this early start means something. When that happens, I think it's no longer good enough because fan apathy sets in. And you can live with Tennessee's success in basketball right now, but you can only live with it as long as fans are still interested in selling and buying tickets. Once Thompson Bowling gets about half empty, it becomes a different problem. And it's like,
we saw that for a second with the Lady Vols, who turned things around, right?
Yes.
I was told that some of the boosters were showing up and hanging out in the press conferences longer than they did previously, that they were concerned, that there was frustration in the fans. Maybe it was still sold out. I don't know, but we saw some of that. But does it get to that point with basketball, or is it just something fun to do and that's good enough? I get to the point where I get very frustrated with Tennessee basketball. And somebody pointed out on the message board, Frank Martin took South Carolina to a Final Four. Bruce Pearl did. Forget about the ties to Tennessee. I'm just talking about a dude took Auburn to the Final Four. Auburn is definitely a football school, and South Carolina is a school. So the point being, if you want to tell me that I'm Mississippi State and I cannot make the college football playoff as long as it's 4 because it's too many things have to happen right for me. I don't have the facilities. There's a glass ceiling. It is not fair. Now, I could point to TCU, but let's pretend that didn't happen. Okay, Caleb? For the most part, 90% of the schools in the nation cannot make a 4-team college football playoff. So that's getting to the Final Four. Don't tell me that 90% of the basketball programs can't make the Final Four. Don't tell me that for a second, because the vast majority have a shot. And I would say a good 60% year in and year out, if they hire the right coach, could make the Final Four. Gonzaga was once called a mid-major. It ain't a mid-major anymore, Caleb.
Yeah. And also, you don't even have to be that good of a coach to get to the Final Four. I mean, we just brought up Frank Martin. Frank Martin got fired just last year. John Brady took LSU to the Final Four when he had Glenn Davis at Tyrus Thomas, I think, in 2006. So, and then he was fired 2 years later. So, yeah, it's sometimes, again, this is what March is about. So the question becomes this. The question becomes, okay, you're right. Any coach can make it to one Final Four. can a coach keep you relevant year in and year out to where there's some sort of fan interest in the program? Look, Rick Barnes does that. Whatever else you want to say about Rick Barnes, this is Tennessee's 5th straight NCAA tournament. They made 6 straight under Bruce Pearl. I think we all think if Barnes stays, Tennessee's going to the tournament next year. So,
yeah, but at what point does that get old?
That's the question. And it gets old when fan apathy sets in. And here's the one problem with Rick Barnes, and I will say this. It's funny because Rick Barnes was a Gary Williams disciple. He coached under Gary Williams at Ohio State. And for those who don't know, Gary Williams and Bruce Pearl are under the same coaching tree because they were developed under Tom Davis, which is they run the flex on offense. They ran the 2-2-1 press and things like that. And so it was fun to watch. Rick Barnes did a little bit of his, he put his own tweaks. He still runs the flex offense. He doesn't run as much tempo on defense though. So it gets to the point where the team, his tweaks make the teams not as fun to watch. If you're producing the same results as Rick Barnes is right now, but you're doing it the way Bruce Pearl was doing it in the mid-2000s at Tennessee or Gary Williams was doing it at Maryland, I think it's a little more digestible. But this team was number 2 earlier in the year, and they still had some fan apathy because it just was not a fun number 2 team to watch.
SC Scout guy says on the message board, I think NIL gives everyone an even greater shot. With all due respect, I'm going to disagree with you because I think it gives Tennessee a better shot in football because there is that foundational money where you can pay. I mean, Nico is not if he's the guy that got the $8 million and we all think he was, he's not the only dude that got paid to come to Tennessee because of NIL money. And Tennessee doesn't have to drop all their coins in one basket. But in basketball, if you're Duke or North Carolina or Kentucky, you can drop it all on one player and it can change your trajectory immediately. So there's actually, I believe, more competition in NIL to get the elite players in college basketball. I don't think it brings up the lower level programs up to the Dukes, North Carolinas, and the Kansases of the world. I don't. Not as long as you've got a coach that's preaching it's preaching this style of offense and defense. At the end of the day, if a kid says, I've got a $15 million offer from Duke, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kansas, and I have to play this style of basketball, what do you think that kid's going to say? He's got the money anywhere, Caleb. I don't see how NIL helps Rick Barnes at all. And I certainly have never heard nor seen any instance in which he has taken advantage of NIL money to make a splash recruit. Am I missing one?
No. I mean, I know Julian Phillips was a 5-star. I don't think NIL got him to Tennessee, though. I think a lot of 5-stars or 4-stars pick Tennessee. The ones that choose to play for Barnes is they know Barnes' track record of developing players, and they want to develop themselves a little bit better for the NBA. And that's why they choose to play for Rick Barnes more than anything else.
But the thing is, Caleb, this is what's so frustrating. The guys that go to Kentucky or the Kevin Durant's of the world, they don't need developing.
Durant would tell you he did need developing by Rick Barnes.
Well, yeah, but come on. I mean, he was going to be one of the better, if not best players in basketball history of all time.
Yes, right. No, I agree. There is a factor of, and this is more common in college basketball, I think, than even college football, where there is a benefit from developing in certain programs. The catch is the way coaches develop you for the NBA is oftentimes a hindrance for them succeeding at the college level. Dean Smith, rest in peace, only won 2 national championships, but he developed players for the NBA.
And coached as long as Methuselah.
Yeah, exactly. But he developed players for the NBA. Like the whole story of people would say that Dean Smith was the only person who could stop Michael Jordan. But the shuffle offense that Dean Smith ran had Michael Jordan perfectly prepared to run the triangle offense in the NBA and to really fit in with an NBA-style offense because, quite honestly, usually primary scoring guards like that had no idea how to fit in with the team in the NBA when they got there.
Travis just said, man, we went to a ton of years just hoping to make the tournament, period. Travis, you know I love you. But why? It's because a guy named Doug Dickey didn't care about basketball and just wanted it to go be quiet and hopefully be somewhat competitive. That's why Wade Houston had to go 5-25 or whatever he went to actually get fired. This is not where you are in big time athletics. And listen, let me ask you this. Basketball schools only. Would Gonzaga be okay with this?
Not anymore. They would have back in 1999.
Right. Absolutely not. Give me another basketball school. Louisville. I don't want to say Kentucky because they are football in the SEC. Duke, North Carolina. Would they be okay with just pecking at the door of the Sweet 16 each and every year? Absolutely not. And the reason is that Tennessee's okay with it because it's money. They want to drop as much as they can into football, especially now. And right now, they got this neat little Barnes thing going on over here they don't have to worry about. So I'm not saying it's time to replace Rick Barnes at all. But I am saying it's time to have a little conversation like, what are your long-term plans of the program and the style of play that you see moving forward? I think it's about time to have that conversation. It's not the old, you fire your coaches or you're gone. It's nowhere close to that. Don't get me wrong, Caleb, but it's okay to have that conversation that, hey, I understand that you're up there in age and probably set in your ways, but you need to adjust something to get this thing rolling at a higher level.
This is what reportedly got him fired at Texas. They wanted him to move on from some assistants who had a certain style, and he wouldn't do it. And one of the stories with Rick Barnes that's notable, and I don't know if you know this, Dave, but Rick Barnes' coaching tree is a pretty bad coaching tree. Like it's a who's who of like Dennis Felton is a Rick Barnes coaching disciple, and Desmond Oliver just got fired, I think, by ETSU. There are just a lot of guys from Rick Barnes' coaching tree that just don't make it elsewhere. Nobody's really sick. And I know that's a weird thing to say, but that means something. Like, don't get me wrong, Nick Saban has had a lot of failures in his coaching tree, but he's had a few smash successes. Arguably the greatest. The guy who just surpassed him is part of his coaching tree in college football.
I'm totally with you. So I want to dive into that. Travis asked a great question. A question like that will change the direction of the show because I want to dive into this. We might mention Zakai Zeigler too. That was the plan originally on our rundown as we met. We meet every morning at 5 a.m. For our pre-production meeting. And then the production meeting is at 6 a.m. And then we have the post-production meeting even before the show at 8 a.m. So Travis says, do you consider us basketball elites? I'm going to ask that question right after this because you either is or you ain't, as they like to say in South Clinton Elementary School, where only I and one other person that you might know actually went. Do you care to guess the other person that went to South Clinton Elementary School when he was a child other than me?
No, just give it to me. I have no idea.
Okay. Frenetic movie director. I'll answer the question after this. He's Caleb Calhoun, Dave Hooker. That's calls the tease, kids. Stay tuned.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassy Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassy, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassy's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassy Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Hey folks, Gary Viles here, Viles Automotive on Calhoun Drive. I've been selling cars here in East Tennessee for 27 years. In that time, I've come to realize it's not about the car. It's about you, the customer. So I'm here to take care of you just like family. Good credit, bad credit, you name it, we can get you taken care of. If we don't have it, we can find it for you. We go across the country to get any vehicle that you want. And here at Viles Automotive, we don't believe in fake numbers. We just give you great deals. And as always, we want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Chattanooga, we're at it again. For the 5th year in a row, you voted us best of the best criminal and DUI law firm.
And finalists for best law firm and best personal injury firm.
Thank you for the love, Chattanooga. We won't let you down.
Our family has been creating jewelry since 1986, each piece unique, with a story all its own. I'm Rick Terry with Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. I'm a jeweler, and I want to be your jeweler. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler. My family and staff look forward to serving you. So please come see us. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street, right next to the Tennessee Theater.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Our listeners and viewers probably can barely notice, but I forgive you. I've had a couple where I've got these big, huge buttons where I can drop in these different rejoins and stuff. But I've got like a food hangover. I ate so much on my birthday celebration yesterday, Caleb, that you ever have like I'm not used to eating carbs. I watch my carb intake. So I ate everything that was in front of me up until probably like 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. And I was like, well, let's go check that cheesecake out. So I've got one of those carb hangovers. You're probably too young to get carb hangovers. You still get the real hangovers, right?
I mean, carbs save me from the real hangovers. So, the rule is to get carbs before you drink.
I mean, when you get off carbs for a long time and you just blow it out one day, it's totally different.
Well, that's because carbs work like sugar, though. So,
yes.
It's like a come down from sugar.
Yes. Vassy Lawn and Garden, man, they've got their big, huge monster, just incredible blowout open of the season sale this week. So get to Vassy Lawn and Garden, man alive. It's worth the drive by, and Power will get you prices you won't get elsewhere. They're in Cleveland, Tennessee, but if you need industrial, commercial mowers or residential mowers, blowers, hedges, trimmers, you need to get to Vassy Lawn and Garden, whether you're in Knoxville or Nashville or Chattanooga. John says, you lived in Clinton. My family is from Lake City, Rocky Top now. I did not live in Clinton. My mom taught there. I lived and was reared, always a funny word to say, in Powell. So I had to go through 3 years of PMS, and that was Powell Middle School, to get my PhD, which was my Powell High diploma. See what I did there, Caleb? But since my mom taught at South Clinton Elementary School, I went there through 5th grade because you could go with your mom. And so does anybody have, I've got shirts to give away, by the way, Hooker shirts that I got from our good friends at Apex Marketing there in Knoxville. I would highly suggest if you need any sort of promotional items, you get them a call. So, all right, let me ask the message board this before I reset today's tough question. What movie director went to South Clinton Elementary School? And if you answer it correctly, then I'm going to hook you up with a Hooker t-shirt that says Hooker across the front. Maybe for Hendon Hooker, maybe for me, maybe for one of my cousins. Actually, I don't have any cousins because I'm an only child. My wife's an only child. So, but again, Vassy Lawn and Garden. Travis got it already.
That was going to be my guess.
What is it? Go ahead and say it, Caleb.
I mean, I'll let you say it because Travis just put it up. I don't want to be the one to steal it from him, but Quentin Tarantino.
Yes. Email me at dave@offthehooksports.com. That's why he always references getting back to Knoxville and all of his movies. Have you ever
I'm
noticed
see why he's tight with Samuel L. Jackson, another Tennessean.
Yes, that's right. And we'll just play Justin Timberlake's as bumpers, but YouTube will get mad at us. So, yes. And my mom taught there for like 30 years. Doesn't remember him at all. It's very quiet. One of our clients, though, bumped into him at one point at a little soiree that it's total coincidence. And they were in the Las Vegas area and said that he likes candy. nose candy, but it's kind of his thing. Caleb's shaking his head and disappointed at
that does not shock me at all.
little frenetic. Let's put it that way. But yes, he went to South Clinton Elementary School. My mom doesn't remember him at all. Isn't that strange?
That is.
Wouldn't you think you would remember a Quentin Tarantino?
He pours all his energy into his art, and so he's quiet in real life. That happens to a lot of people.
City Heating and Air Conditioning, Integrity Matters, cityheatandair.com. They are phenomenal. And in the Knoxville area, if you've got any sort of HVAC unit, you need it taken care of by City Heating and Air Conditioning, because they'll give you an honest assessment, not just say, well, just put a new HVAC unit in it. John said you lived in Clinton. My family is from Lake City, Rocky Top now. Okay, so I had this brilliant idea the first year I bought a boat, Caleb, and I was going to put it in what's called Rocky Top now. It was called Lake City at the time, but you have to drive all the way around the lake. So while you could be at the lake from North Knoxville in 30 minutes, to save on my slip fee, it was $100 instead of $175. I drove all the way around the lake. Not the worst idea, because it's a beautiful side of the lake. Here's the problem. Don't ever forget your boat keys after you make the 1.5-hour drive up to your boat.
That would be a bad idea. that would not go well.
Because if you do that, what do? You drive back. It's a 3-hour round trip. Suddenly, the day is over. Excuse me. I'm resetting today's tough question. It's right now.
Today's tough question. Take a side.
Take a stand.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Are you happy with this? Is this good enough? Pecking on the door of the Sweet 16 year in and year out. Is this good? You've got a great man, and I almost said Quentin Tarantino, and Rick Barnes leading your program. You don't have a Will Wade who's trying to escape the clutches of the FBI. So you don't have to ever worry about that. But you may never make the Final Four. You're just pecking on the door like The Crow by Edgar Allan Poe, and trying to get into the Sweet 16 year in and year out. Mr. Jones says, does Barnes need to go if he doesn't perform this March? I'm not ready to go nearly that far, but Caleb, it's certainly the direction I'm going in. How much longer does pecking at the Sweet 16 and the possibility of getting in that with no real threat of making the Final Four, because this team doesn't have that. It doesn't. How long is that good enough? I ask you that today's tough question part 2.
It's good enough as long as fan interest is there, and it's good enough as long as every 5 years he can have a team that can make it. Look, I mean, he hasn't made it, but that 2019 team was definitely capable of getting there. Just happened to lose a heartbreaker in the Sweet 16, which happens. So I think.
When you say as long as, how long will? Let me ask you this. Let me rephrase it. How long will the fans be okay with this?
That does become a trickier question. I think.
Barnes 78 years old, by the way.
60,
so these once every 5-year runs that you're talking about are 68 years old. Excuse me. Did I say 78?
Well, there's a third caveat here, by the way, and it's who's the athletic director. If Dave Hart's athletic director, if Mike Hamilton's athletic director, if even John Curry's athletic director, and definitely if Philip Fulmer's athletic director, I say you're happy with it, because I don't trust any of them to make a good hire. I think John Curry could, but it's like, it's a crapshoot when you make a good hire in college basketball. Danny White's like the reverse. He's going to make a good hire. And so maybe this is where this changes a little bit, is that Danny White is the best in the business at hiring coaches. He's found coaches out of nowhere. He's got a coach he found now has the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. And another coach he found did the best job in college football last year at Kansas and Lance Leipold. So we're talking the best you could possibly find at hiring coaches. That changes things just a little bit, because I would put all my faith in Danny White to hire a new coach. Any other athletic director in the country, including myself, if I'm there, I'd stick with Barnes, because I wouldn't trust myself to find a coach the way I trust Danny White.
Well, and remember this, the guy that we would have said a month ago he should hire would be Nate Oates, right?
Yeah.
Alabama, and
Exactly.
certainly you wouldn't want to hire him now. And it was just strange timing. I was reading our message board comments and it said they need a scorer like Brandon Miller when they absolutely need points. Well, I don't think anybody would take Brandon Miller right now. Elias gives me some insight because I don't hang out in message boards and I don't probably talk to as many fans as you guys do. And when I do, it's on the show. But Elias says the grumbling is already pretty loud, even if I don't agree with it. I mean, that's a question. Are you fine with having just a good program that it's respectable, but it's not going to make a real Final Four run? Who would you replace him with? Penny Hardaway, just kidding. No, it wouldn't be Penny. And no, it wouldn't be now Nate Oates at Alabama after we've seen what he's gone through. But Travis, who's a huge Tennessee fan, said, I'm 80% on board with Barnes. And if we make a Final Four, this is a moot point. Absolutely. Make a Final Four. We're not even having this discussion for the next 4 or 5 years. But if you don't, and you say you're just 80% on board, then where would fans that are 80% on board, which I think is a pretty good number, actually. I think most are about in there. Where are you if you lose in the first round, Caleb?
I'm still as on board as I was before because I think they're losing.
Not you, but the fan base.
I think fan base. I think now because I think the grumblings were there before the tournament started. I think they're still on board largely because again, I think there's a lot of memories over the struggles of Tennessee basketball throughout the years. And honestly, since firing Don, I don't know if they fired since Don DeVoe left in 19 whatever that was. They have desperately struggled to find some consistency. They've had no stability in head coaching whatsoever. Bruce Pearl Rick Barnes has already lasted longer than any coach since Don DeVoe at Tennessee.
Caleb, let me do this. Okay, I can define really easily, and tell me on the message board if you disagree. I can define sustained success in football really easily. Okay, you should win an SEC title and. Well, I was saying this I'm going to change it, actually. You should win with the 12-team playoff. You should win the SEC title, and you should be in the college football playoff 3 out of 5 years. That's a 5-year window.
You should win the SEC title all 3 years?
No. Once in the 5-year span.
Okay.
And then make the college football playoff 3 out of 5 years. I think that's fair. With the 12
top
team
10 program of all time, yeah, totally agree.
I mean, I got no, and if you can't live up to that, then it's time to head on out of Rocky Top. And I think Josh Heupel will be able to do that easily. John says, I'm starting to get tired of Barnes. I'm tired of taking Tums at 52. I would like to see us get further without being so frustrated during the season. Bruce Pearl got us to an Elite 8. So with what you hear from the fan base and the feedback, please define, because I don't know. Because I was raised during the Doug Dickey era when basketball, was kind of like the, I don't know, it was kind of like the skee ball table at a Dave & Buster's. Everything else was really nice, but the skee ball table was just over there churning some revenue, and who cares? But Tennessee basketball doesn't have to be the skee ball anymore. They could invest money and go out and get a great coach. They've got the facilities. So define a 5-year run? What is fair, and is Rick Barnes living up to that?
Okay, so for me personally, I think a 5-year run is 4 trips to the NCAA tournament. I think it's good. I think it's fine if you miss once every 5 years just because of the nature of college basketball. You could have a rebuilding year, whatever. So 4 trips to the NCAA tournament, 3 top 25 finishes, should we say, win an SEC regular season title once in those 5 years.
I think you're being really nice to put the rankings on it, but the simple fact is it's a tournament sport.
Exactly. Yeah. And so in the NCAA tournament, I think you should be going to the second weekend once every 5 years. That's where I'm at with it. I don't really.
Wow.
I know I got low standards. I got a question just real quick before we go further.
Can I just tell you mine real quick?
Yeah, sure.
It's make the tournament 4 out of 5. It's make the Final Four 1 out of 5.
Once every 5 years for a program that's never made the Final Four in history?
I think the money's there. I think before Gonzaga got serious and invested money in it and realized they could do this, that they had the set of standards you have. I think Tennessee could do the same thing easier. They've got more money than Gonzaga. I think they could do this, even if it requires hiring an up-and-coming coach and maybe having to replace him with another up-and coach. I think the standard should be Final Four every 5 years, make the tournament 4 out of 5.
I mean, we're talking like even at places like North Carolina and Duke, sometimes they go 5 years without making the Final Four. So I'm like,
and then they usually replace their coach.
Yes, but Tennessee's not on the North Carolina Duke standard. I'll just give you an example because we brought up Gary Williams earlier. Gary Williams is a Hall of Fame head coach. Won a national championship, was at Maryland for 20 years. He made 2 Final Fours. So that was once every 10 years. And so I'm just thinking like, look, I think Final Four I would give you, make the second weekend once every 5 and make a Final Four once every 8 or something like that. But a Final Four every 5 years,
you either have to go one of 2 routes to guarantee that would happen. You find the John Calipari, who has incredible ties to the AAU circuit and can get you the one and done players, or you have somebody that's an X's and O's savant that's ahead of the game, like I believe Bruce Pearl was at his time at Tennessee. You do those 2 things, then I'm not saying you fire a guy if he makes 5 straight Elite Eights. Don't get me wrong, but if you're ending it with, after this 5-year run, made the tournament 4 times. Got bounced out once, made the Sweet 16 twice, and then got bounced out in the second round. No. Then you should be worried about your job at the end of 5 years.
Man, Dave got those standards.
There's too much money, Caleb.
You were definitely the dad. You were definitely the parent that was like, my kid needs to bring home no more than 2 Bs and no Cs allowed on the report card.
Yes, I was that.
I knew it. Dave is like, expectations are really high, and this is what I expect. And
you've got all this money, and you've got NIL money. I mean,
okay, so here's a question I have for you, because you've covered a lot of coaching hires in the past, and I think Bruce Pearl and definitely Josh Heupel kind of just Lane Kiffin more than Bruce Pearl, but really just kind of lit this idea on fire. But how often does Tennessee hire or stick with coaches because they're such a good fit in the community and they get along with the boosters? Because Rick Barnes is this type of coach. He is a Western North Carolina Appalachian guy. He fits in this community. Does that help? Was that a reason for history purposes? Was that a reason they hired Buzz Peterson? Because he was so connected to the area.
Yes, and they weren't connected at the time to basketball circles. So that was kind of the best they could do. They're like, he was in Michael Jordan's wedding. That works for us. That's pretty much what they did. It is. And Michael Jordan didn't show up to Thompson Bowling Arena one time. Think of how much he could have helped Tennessee recruit had he showed up.
Have you guys seen Michael Jordan, the NBA executive? He would be the worst recruiter ever because his talent evaluation is pathetic.
All he has to do is show up. And then Buzz says, this is the guy we really want. And Michael says, I'm the man. Well, today's tough question a step further. In 5 years, is Tennessee better off if Rick Barnes coaches until he's 73, or they go get a young up-and-comer? Are they going deeper into the tournament year in and year out?
Okay, look, I will say this, but I'm taking a huge gamble, but I don't know if I'm right. I will say they're better off with the young up-and-comer. But again, I say that because Danny White is athletic director. If Dave Hart is athletic director, I'm not saying that at all.
Well, and you could hire a Donnie Tyndall that embarrasses your program. So, that is very possible. But
by the way, Dave Hart, Mike Hamilton, they all should have hired Rick Byrd. That was the greatest failure in Tennessee basketball.
Rick Byrd would have had the same career that Rick Barnes has had at Tennessee. If they'd have hired him at the same time, there's no question. And I'll say this. If you go out and you hire an up-and-coming coach, and he doesn't pan out for whatever reason, as long as he doesn't get you in serious NCAA issues, what are you going to do? You're going to go hire another one. And that's what Tennessee did with Bruce Pearl. They caught him on the way up, partially because of all that happened with Illinois and him trying to turn another team in and secretly record people. So they were able to get a really great deal on a really great coach, because a lot of other programs didn't want to hire him because he had a tarnished reputation. But the simple fact is, Tennessee, there's 10 other coaches that are considered up-and-coming coaches right now that they could go hire if Rick Barnes retired after this NCAA tournament, and they could get the exact same result. And if that's what you're good with, again, stick with that dude for 10 or 15 years. But I think at that point, because Rick Barnes is such a saint, you would say to the new guy, unless he follows in line with that, you would say, maybe it's time for another new guy.
Yeah.
I think Tennessee could do that. I think they could get out of contracts. I know they're joked about as buyout university, but if it takes something to, let's face it, I mean, Tennessee's still looking for the next Bruce Pearl. Bruce Pearl loved Tennessee. He was never going to leave. He was never going to take another job. Rick Barnes flirted with UCLA openly. I don't understand. What's that?
Because he wanted a pay raise, yeah.
Right. I don't understand just the blind loyalty of this is just as absolutely good as it can get, and this is where Tennessee is, and just accept it. Had Gonzaga accepted that, they wouldn't be any better.
So
I'm sorry, Caleb. Had Kentucky football accepted that, they would still be a 3-8 team.
But Kentucky, that's a good example, though. Okay, I'm not saying Tennessee basketball is Kentucky football. I think Tennessee basketball ceiling is higher than Kentucky football. But Kentucky football has accepted that this is the best they can do with Mark Stoops. I still say Mark Stoops has done a better job than any coach in college football the last 10 years. To do what he's done at Kentucky, the hardest program to be successful at, and Kentucky's football program, their administration knows that about them.
But Caleb, if you want to make that comparison, then you've got to factor in that Mark Stoops and Kentucky, they do have a glass ceiling because of the lack of in-state recruiting talent. The fact that if you go north, Ohio and the Big Ten teams are going to dominate. If you go south, Tennessee is going to dominate. You really are stuck in a recruiting sort of strange position where you can only get so much better. That's not the case with Tennessee basketball. If they go out and pick up, some superstar, Bronny James or whoever it might be, then you can change the trajectory of the program. It doesn't take 12 guys. It takes 1 or 2.
That's true. The question becomes, what is the style of play? And this may be a different question, a different day. What's the style of play in basketball that's like Josh Heupel style in football that nobody's tapped into yet? We should start scouting some coaches, Dave, and see what's the style in basketball that hasn't been tapped into yet.
I tell you, it's been tapped into and it worked, and I would go back and do it again. Amoeba defense. UNLV, somebody mentioned them earlier, and it got me thinking that may be a little bit before your time. So are you aware of what the Amoeba defense is?
I know of the UNLV run, but I don't know what the Amoeba defense was. No.
Okay, the Amoeba defense was you had such 5 special athletes that you basically played 4-on-5, and then the 5th guy, which was usually Stacey Augmon, would play the ball. Wherever the ball went, he went and covered the ball. And you didn't allow easy scores from the post. Would it work nowadays with the 3-point shot? I don't know, but it was very.
That would be so exhausting, though. It would wreck your ability on offense because you'd be using so much energy on defense.
You get so many easy buckets, which is what they did.
And that reminds me somewhat of like a half-court version of 40 Minutes of Hell.
Yeah, very, very similar. Yeah. So. Anyway, there's stuff out there you could do that's different than, hey, let's go shoot the mid-range jumper and defend the post. It's hard to watch. That's the one response I get with Tennessee basketball. That's the one response I get is, man, Dave, gosh, I hope they do good in the tournament, but they're really hard to watch. Really, really hard to watch.
Very, very, very true. I think part of success is just finding a style that maybe not even is up and coming style. It's so different than what everybody has to face on a week in and week out basis that you have to change up everything you do when you face this team.
Yes. I'll tell you what Tennessee basketball is right now. It's practically a Lenny Kravitz album. Every year is a Lenny Kravitz album. There's one good song on there that gets you really excited, and then the other 12, 13, 14 songs are just total clunkers.
I would have said
it's the Joshua Tree of college basketball. The first 3 songs are great by U2, and then after that, you're like, what the hell is this all about?
You know, it's funny you say that. I've always thought of Joshua Tree as a legendary album. Then I'm thinking, no, it's really the first 3 songs.
It's the first 3 songs, and you're in, and then you get like 6 or 7 deep, and you're like in February waiting for the tournament, and you're like, this isn't very good.
No, you're right. That's actually a really good point. You know, some make such a good impression. They're like, it'll be like the first 7. Get Rich or Die Trying, 50's first album, first 7 songs, all like historic bangers.
Go buy a Lenny Kravitz album. Pick any one you want.
I bought one time, and you have a great point.
One good song, right?
Yeah.
And the other 11, you're like, were they even trying?
He did that was what so many artists used to do. They're like, all right, let me get this one single, and I'll sell the albums, and then I'll sleepwalk my way through the rest of it. And then they complain about streaming singles and no longer doing albums. I'm like, well, that's because you're responsible for that.
Yes. By the way, for the message board, should I got 2 different ticket options because GNR is playing in Thompson Bowling Arena. So I got 2 different ticket options. I've got Guns N' Roses, John, put together a great couple of albums with the Use Your Illusions. But I've got 2 options. Caleb, which would you do? You're a huge GNR fan, right?
I like GNR. I'm not a stan. No.
There you go. Okay. So I got 2 options. This is, if you consider where I hold them, and that is, had Axel not been crazy, they would have been the Led Zeppelin of my generation. But they took like 10 years off and started a band with a guy that had a KFC chicken bucket on his head. And so that's true. Okay, so I can go with a $375 ticket, and I'm in the pit where I have to get in the mosh pit and knock people around at near 50 years old with my son. Or you've still got the first row right behind the pit, and you can spend $900, but you've got a seat. Which would you do? Keep in mind, there's an artificial hip involved.
Yeah, it depends on your financial situation. What I would do is, I can't go there.
It's not good enough for $900. So I'm going to be knocking people around, and that is like the second Tuesday in August. If you get a text from me at that night and I say I'm in the emergency room, I can't do the show tomorrow, it's because I got knocked down by like a 19-year-old kid.
When is somebody going to hold Ticketmaster accountable for this? Because, they merged with Live Nation in 2010. This is why the things are so expensive, because there's a monopoly. They have an outright monopoly. And the fact that the federal government approved that merger is just, that shows how corrupt they are, because that is so anti-competition, what they did in 2010. And that's why these tickets are through the roof now.
The artists have some.
No, they have no say.
But they call it the patience package, where you can get into the pit 4 hours before everybody else and stake out that front right against the wall.
I don't think it's usually them.
And you get your picture taken with a cutout of Guns N' Roses, not even really Guns N' Roses, just a cutout billboard of them.
Wow.
that bumps up the pit price from $375 to $750.
Oh Lord.
I'm not doing that.
Man.
He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. So you're happy with Tennessee's football program or basketball program knocking on the door? At least you think the fans are for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. I think this is all you can really ask for. So, I mean, not all you can ask for, but I think the grass isn't always greener.
I think this is a very important tournament that if they get bounced out in the first weekend, you're going to have some fans change their tune. I think that Travis already alluded to it, that he's already hearing some grumblings, whether or not he agrees with it. So there you go. Have a fantastic day, everyone. We're with you each and every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Check out the YouTube channel. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This